after the Civil War is really going to be the time when the industrialization of America kicks into high gear. And by 1890, America will become a major economic power. A few Americans will get extraordinarily rich, will become the richest people in the world. A slightly larger group of Americans will prosper in the middle class, but the vast majority of Americans are actually going to become poor during this period. So our average income goes through the roof, but most Americans are getting poor. So what does a country need to get rich, particularly during this period? Well, you need a lot of natural resources. That's going to be provided, of course, by the American West for the most part, which we've recently conquered, settled. You need a growing labor force. Somebody's got to do the work. That's going to be provided by immigrants. You need technological innovations. We're going to talk about a lot of those in this chapter here. You also need ruthless entrepreneurs, people who are willing to do whatever it takes to grow their business. And, of course, you need a business-friendly government. You need a government that is going to be willing to let businesses do what they need to do to grow. And you need a growing domestic market. You need people to buy all the stuff that you're making. All these things are going to be present during America, or in America during the late 1800s, and they are going to lead to the great growth in American prosperity. Let's talk about some new technologies that are going to come along. In 1866, Cyrus Field lays the transatlantic cable. This connects New York to London, and now we can communicate between these two continents. Now, this is really important for business. We think about communication as calling your friends and seeing what's going on, or talking to your husband or wife or your kids or something. But really what this is about is businesses able to do businesses over vast distances with much less hassle. And so that is going to really help intercontinental trade. By the 1870s, Alexander Graham Bell has developed the first commercial phone. We're going to talk about that a lot more in detail a little bit later in the chapter. But the same thing, phone is originally going to be used primarily by businesses. By 1900, there will be 1.3 million phones in America. By 1920, there will be 13.3 million. That's a big jump. And of course, today, almost everybody has a phone. In the 1890s, Guglielmo Marconi invents the radio. He's Italian. But the radio is going to be a revolutionary invention. The first time we can broadcast in a mass way to large numbers of people, our media. In 1868, the typewriter is invented by Christopher Sholes. Now, we take the typewriter for granted. In fact, nobody even uses one anymore. But imagine how important that is, the ability to type out things, and so they're in this clear, readable way. And, of course, it's faster than writing if you're good at it. In 1879, James Ritty invents the cash register, another invention you probably take for granted. We're moving away from those as well. But major innovation in terms of business. In 1891, William S. Burroughs, and yes, the writer William S. Burroughs is descended from him, invents the adding machine, which, if you're doing something like accounting or inventory, is incredibly useful. One of the things that's going on as well is the improvement of the steam engine, which are going to make freighters and shipping and railroad all better. And, of course, transportation is vital to an economy. Also, by the 1870s, we'll see refrigerators, which is not only important for your home, but think about the industrial use. If you're a restaurant or a meat packing company or something like this, refrigerators are vital to many, many industries. The Industrial Revolution had been built out of iron, but now it's going to begin to be built out of steel. Steel is a lot better than iron. Iron is actually fairly soft and easily bendable. And in fact, iron and steel both are barely produced in America before the Civil War. But after the Civil War, the railroad creates an enormous demand for iron. Of course, it was originally built out of iron. But the steel industry comes along as a better alternative. By the way, if you don't know, iron comes from the ground. Iron ore is mined, and then shaped into what you want. Steel is melted iron with coke, or burnt-up charcoal, added into it, as well as they often put some other things like molybdenum, that makes it at the same time harder, but also more flexible. And so this is what steel is. Steel is going to be incredibly important to America and the world in general as we continue to transition to a more technologically advanced society. Now, in England, a man named Henry Bessemer had invented a process. It was developed at the same time in America separately by a man named William Kelly. But they had invented a better, more efficient way to turn iron into steel. And it also allowed for more of these additives to increase the strength and flexibility of steel. it made large-scale steel production possible. And the Pennsylvania coal fields will make eastern Pennsylvania and Ohio leaders in steel production. These industries will spread, by the way, to Michigan, Minnesota, and Alabama, which actually has large iron fields, which you may not be aware of, or iron ore deposits, I should say. And so Cleveland, Detroit, Chicago, of course Pittsburgh, we all know the football team, and Birmingham, Alabama, interestingly enough, all become major steel towns. And steel back then was like this miracle substance. I mean, we don't think of it as particularly progressive or innovative today, but it totally was at this time. The new steel furnaces could produce 500 tons of steel a week, which dramatically increases the amount of steel we can produce. But it requires heavier shipping, which is, curiously enough, made possible by steel. A steel railroad or a steel freighter can hold more. Large mechanized freighters will be used on the Great Lakes, and of course massive railroad systems, bigger, stronger railroad systems, will be built to transport the steel. Another thing these larger machines need is they need lubrication. They're just dealing with higher friction because they're faster and they're carrying more. In order to lubricate these machines, oil will become a major business. Oil actually had been considered a nuisance. If you found oil on your property before this time, you would very likely set it on fire and burn it off to get rid of it. There was a lot of oil above ground originally. It will not be until this time when the increased demand for lubrication comes in that Bissell will begin to use. That oil will begin to use for lubrication. It had been used as a fuel for lamps, an alternative to whale blubber. Bissell started that process, but now it's going to become the great lubricant to our new industrial age. The first great oil field in America was actually in Titusville, Pennsylvania. You see a picture of it there. And this sparked a massive oil boom, which will obviously spread down into places like Texas and Alaska. Its use as a fuel to put into a vehicle, that does not come till later. Right now we're using it to light a lamp or lubricate a machine.